Welcome to Highlighted, a Life Church Midweek Podcast. Here we're on a journey to make our sermons more practical in our everyday lives, and we want to inspire you to live out your faith every single day, not just on Sundays. In each episode, we highlight our sermons and our ministries to see how God is working in our church and through our community. And for the first time in the whole month of February,
it's
in
crazy.
a long time, we're back in the chairs together. You and me, the
dynamic duo.
Yeah, sure. I didn't know what to call us.
Are you Robin or Batman?
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Does that make you Anakin?
I think you
Darth
might
Vader?
be Anakin,
Oh.
and I might be Obi-Wan.
Yeah. So that's why I don't serve in kids, because the younglings.
Oh, no. You went there.
And Anakin.
That's crazy. Okay, we're going to cut this part out. I'm just kidding. Hey, it's great to be sitting beside you again. And this series, wow.
Yeah.
Man,
and
relationship
also,
goals.
like what a break from this series on Sunday, because you weren't
I
here.
wasn't.
You were playing hooky.
I was.
And no,
I was.
Pastor was at home with the flu, and I think he's safe now.
We'll find out. I've been around Paul
I don't know.
all
I'm
day.
kind of too close to him right now. But no, it's very fun because even though you were gone, we didn't leave our series and take a break.
Yeah.
And we got to continue on with this idea that all circulates around different kinds of goals and goal setting and goal keeping and goal posts, and really, having kind of that safety net up there is really what I thought about when we started exploring this idea in the series, and trying to make it all make sense, and knowing that, like, our boundaries aren't there to block someone off.
Right.
It's not a wall that we put up against people, but it's a safety net to catch us.
Yeah.
And to keep us safe.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things as Pastor Baba was preaching on Sunday, and for those of you who maybe are like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, if you missed
So
it, go
clear.
back and listen to the sermon.
Go back and listen to the sermon. But it was goalkeepers, and the idea wasn't that we in relationships that we goal keep and keep boundaries that are my boundaries, right? They're boundaries for our relationship so that we can keep our eyes and our focus on the goalpost, moving towards the goal of our relationships. And so this is true whether it's a romantic relationship like a husband and wife, whether it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, whether it's just two buddies hanging out, right? Every relationship has goals that we're working towards, and we have to work towards those things together. So one of those boundaries, like in my relationships, I can get distracted really easy, and I think that I can multitask. And the reality is most people think they can, and they really can't. And there are a very small subset of people that do very well multitasking. Most people just think they can, and I don't do well. I think I can, but I don't do well. And so if I'm talking to you and I'm looking here, that's probably a problem. Right, I'm going to miss something that you say. In fact, that happens frequently in like staff meeting or something. I'll get a text message, or I'll be working on something, and one of you guys will say something, and I'll have to stop and say, I need you to say that again. And so, because I just miss it. And so these boundaries in our relationships aren't about boundaries that I'm setting to keep you in check and our relationship in check. They're boundaries that we set so that we continue to move towards the goal, because we get distracted when we don't have boundaries, and when we don't know where we're going and what we're doing. We can wander off the field a little bit, and that becomes problematic. We're not ready for when things happen. And so Sunday, Pastor Bobber brought up Nehemiah and the wall that they were building around Jerusalem, and how the workers were not just building, but Scripture kind of gives this indication they were building with one hand and guarding with the other, right? And I thought, what a beautiful illustration of what relationships should be like. I should be guarding those relationships with my kids, with my spouse, with my coworkers, and even new relationships sometimes take guarding, because not everybody's going to like when you're connected with someone. Not everybody's going to like when, and the enemy's definitely not going to like when you're connecting with someone, especially if you or them need something from each other that God is trying to orchestrate and make happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said new relationships. Take this, and again, not just romantic relationships, but friendships and family relationships, and everyone that we interact with, and especially when it's a newer thing. and it feels like you're constantly testing the waters. And it's like one of those things like, well, should I joke about this, or should I even ask them what their opinion on this is? And like, I don't really know. But when you have clear boundaries set,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of the guesswork out of that.
Right.
And it kind of leads to a greater relationship that you're not tiptoeing around a fence and defense, right? But you're really setting your eyes on the goal of moving that relationship towards
taking notes
Christ.
on podcasts. You should write that down.
Yeah.
Don't tiptoe around a fence or defense.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah. I don't know.
Sometimes
it happens
on the fly.
Sometimes it happens,
like
but unfortunately, it happens on Tuesdays when we record these, which is why I don't preach. Because it wouldn't happen on a Sunday.
That's funny. No, that's good, because for so many of us, we autopilot relationships, and then when something happens, we don't know how to deal with it. Right? When the ball kind of now, right? We're talking about goalkeeping, and the ball is coming at us full force, and whatever that might be in our relationship, and it gets kicked at us, and when we're not ready, when we're not prepared, when we're not goalkeeping, we're not going to be able to stop that thing. We're not going to be able to keep that thing from happening. It's going to cause issues, and usually it starts with a small offense, right? An offense leads to other things, and it eventually leads to this bitterness and the death of the relationship. And so every relationship goal, right? I don't want any of my relationships to die, even if they change. I don't want them to die. We go through this. Probably the biggest way that I'm going through this right now is with my son, and it's not been a secret on the podcast or on the sermons. I'm pretty open about all of the craziness in my life, and my relationship with my son, though he'll always be my son, and but it's transitioning and changing some because of his age and because of what the things that he's about to do and where he's about to go, and all these things are kind of changing all at once, and I'm not handling it well, but we're keeping in focus, and we've talked about like what are some things we want to make sure that we do. And specifically, I've been talking with him about his relationships with people that he has grown up with here and that he loves and that love him. We were riding somewhere the other day talking about his relationship with his sisters. And they have such a close-knit relationship. In fact, they all get frustrated when one of the other ones won't do something with them. And so even as early as less than 24 hours ago, Malachi was going somewhere, and it was kind of spur of the moment, and so everybody was okay with it. But you could tell after he left, the whole room kind of deflated a little bit because his sisters couldn't go.
And that's kind of my fault.
It is your fault.
It's completely my fault. He's trying to cover it up.
Yeah, I
am. Me and Malachi and Marissa, we all went to the gym together.
Right.
And Marissa worked out, and me and Malachi just played basketball. We in my defense, we did say, "Hey, check if your sisters want to go with you."
And in his defense,
and he did.
But they could not. They both had schoolwork to do, and so, but you could tell like they wanted to be there. They wanted to go, and not in part because Marissa was there, right? And you too, but Marissa
you just wrote me in,
and in part because also they really do. They spend time together, so it's a goal in their relationship. So we were talking about he's leaving, and most of you who are watching probably already know that in August or so he'll be heading out of state for school. And
don't cry.
Try not to hold it back. And him and I had a conversation the other day about like, okay, your relationship is changing with people who are here. You're going to have to put in effort in a different way, and especially with your sisters who are younger than you. And it's a weird change. It's hard. They're not going to know when they can call you, when they can interact with you. And he was like, they can always call. And I was like, yeah, but you're going to have to sort of institute this time where, okay, we're getting on the phone, we're hanging out. When you're home, we're playing games, we're doing this stuff. And that's goalkeeping. That's what we're talking about here, setting these boundaries. Okay, when I'm home, I'm going to spend time with people that I love. And this is part of the reason this is so important to me is because nobody taught me this. And there were relationships that suffered as I was growing up, that I still have, but they suffered because of the lack of connection, the lack of goalkeeping in this. And so I just think it's important that as we talk about it, not just from a young person's perspective, but even as we grow older, right? We kind of get set in our ways. We kind of get set in what we're going to do, and all these things. And the reality is we can learn, we can be changed, but we should be goalkeepers of our relationship. What boundaries are we setting that elevates these relationships to the place where they deserve? We were made for relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think every single relationship that we have, there's always expectation. And if we don't set the expectation, that means the other person is setting it for us. And maybe I don't want to talk to you every day of the week, but the other person's like, "Oh, well, now I have my new best friend. I'm going to talk to them every single day of the week." And for me, it's just really draining. But if I never set that boundary up, if I never even say, "Hey, I really, I love you. I appreciate you," but also like I need to spend time with my wife and my family on
Right.
this day. Like I can't only tend to you or this or that. And you think like with my parents who live here, but now I live away from them, and I have a wife, I have a dog, I have my own life, but it's not that I've pushed them out of my life
Right.
either. But having that clear communication and that clear understanding to know that like, Mom, Dad, I love you still. I'm still going to be around. I'm still going to talk to you, but also they understand like you also need time, building your own family, building your own life. And we've prepared you for this, and we're okay with this. And sometimes when sometimes it stings a little bit. Sometimes your son is moving to Tennessee in just a few months, and sometimes it feels like there's not enough time left and you're trying to cram everything in. But ultimately, right, if we build our relationships right and we center them around Christ,
right,
they're going to be strong, and they're going to last through those tough parts.
3 weeks of this series, that's what we've been talking about, right? Set those goals, right? Keep those in focus and fight for them, right? Fight for those moments. And so when we say boundaries, there's different levels of boundaries. Pastor Bob approached it on Sunday as boundaries in ways that, both protect the person and the relationship. You also just shaped it that way. And that's good. We need those things. In addition to that, just protecting the relationship. Right. And doing it in such a way, I like how you kind of use the example with your parents. Hey, and I said, I'm not going to be okay with that. I'm not, we've decided when our kids get married that we're just going to show up and we're going to move in their house. I'm not moving in with them. I know better than that, but we're going to come in, kick our shoes off, leave all the cabinets open, dirty all the dishes, come in and
then complain about the chores you got to do.
Right. And then complain about the chores. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, it's so important. And I think I think relationship building is sort of a lost art. And I love the picture that Nehemiah brings to this, that, inside of this wall, there's something worth protecting. There's something worth fighting for. There's something worth standing up and building inside of our relationship. But it does need protection. It does need us to care for it. It needs to matter. And so that's how we've kind of approached this. And again, you got the goal setting, you've got the goal post versus the scoreboard, okay, which is another form of protecting. But then also that's an internal protection more than an external. This is an external boundaries and protections of our relationships. And so I just would encourage you, if you're listening to this and you're thinking through some of your relationships and maybe you've allowed things to creep in and distract you from your relationship. One of the things we set very early in our marriage, and again, this isn't just about marriage relationships, but that's one of the key relationships in my life. And so when I talk about relationships, it comes up. But we set pretty early on in our marriage, we don't have a TV in our bedroom, because we probably spend more time sharing the day with each other right before bed than we do any other time. People are always amazed at, like, they'll ask Casey if I told them something, or ask me if Casey told me something. We're like, nope. Because most of the time when we're together, we're just trying to figure out what's next, right? We're just trying to make something happen. We're trying to get dinner done, or we're trying to clean this or do that. But that time we set aside to kind of debrief our day. And it's something that we've had to learn to protect, especially with cell phones, because it doesn't matter if you have a TV in your room. You got a TV everywhere you go now. Right. And so we've had to protect that. It's been difficult because early on it was easy, right? You just don't put a TV in your room.
Especially, not to call you old, but you're older than I am, and you've been married for longer.
Yeah.
And when I got married, I've had an iPhone since I was 14.
Right.
And, I've had that screen and before that I had an iPod.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's not a new thing to me, but I can't imagine what it must be like to be used to the early relation, like even marriage, like early marriage relationship where, you don't even have a cell phone. Maybe, I don't know.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I had one when we got married, but when we first started dating, no.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to date myself right now.
I thought you dated Casey.
I did, but when we first got
That was
together,
so cheesy.
that was so
I'm
bad. When we first got together, she had a cell phone. It was a Nokia brick. I mean, these things could last in anything. When the apocalypse happens one day, Nokia phones are still going to be around. Cockroaches and Nokia phones. But I bought a phone card, and I was working at different stores merchandising for a pop company. And
for those of you at home, that means soda.
Yeah.
Pop is a soda.
West
company.
Virginia-ism.
Yeah, coming out.
There it is. What are you going to do? And what you would do is you would scratch off the back of the card, you'd dial a 1-800 number on the card, then you put a code in, and then you would dial the person's number, and you would have so many minutes that you purchased to use on the payphone. What's a payphone?
Yeah, what's that?
And that was how, like, while I was out and about, I would communicate with her. And so, I don't know if this is totally off topic, but we're here now, so it is what it is. Captive audience, captive Paul. There's a commercial, because you could use payphones to call collect, and somebody else would pay the bill on their phone bill. And there's an old commercial where it would ask you your name so that you could tell the person who you were, but it was a small snippet of recording, just a couple of seconds. There was a commercial where a guy, him and his wife had a baby. They were at the hospital, so they dialed the number and they called, and it says, "You have a collect call from," and the guy said that his name was "We Oughta Baby It's a Boy." And his parents, the grandparents of the child, picked up the phone and said, "You have a collect call from We Oughta Baby It's a Boy. And would you like to accept the charges?" And he's like, "Nope." And he hangs up, and his wife says, "Who was that, honey?" And he was like, "That's John," or whatever. They had a baby. It's a boy. And so, payphones, it was a crazy time, but yeah. And I don't even know how we got on that.
So we were talking about your relationship, no TV.
Yeah. No TV.
You have your phone.
Yeah.
But, starting out, you didn't have a phone.
No.
And then this new thing gets introduced into your lives, and not just, your personal life, but everyone's life.
Right.
And now everyone has one. And, like, they're love them, hate them. Like, they're kind of a necessity.
Yeah.
And they're here. And, like, to do your job, you need to have it, right? If someone wants to get in contact with you, you need to have it. If you want to check the weather, because we don't know is it going to snow? Is midweek going to get canceled? You need the phone, and it's an amazing, valuable tool. But also, if you let it become a distraction and you don't create that boundary, even the useful tool, can cause problems.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and another way, we were talking about your son earlier. I'm going to talk about him again. Another way to kind of create a boundary that was kind of creative the first time I heard him say this, and it was shortly after you guys moved into the parsonage, maybe like 6 months. So it's a little while ago now, and I had asked him if he wanted to come to church and help me do some stuff, because he likes learning that kind of stuff, and I always try to bring him on board if I can have an opportunity to teach him and show him how to do it. And I had texted him like, "Hey, Malachi, do you want to, like, you're done with school, I'm still at the church, I'm about to do this, like, do you want to help me?" And he said, "I really want to learn that, but I've spent, I think, way too much time at church this week for me." And not in I spent too much time, but being a PK, he's here more than anyone.
Yeah.
And he's here for things that he has to be at, things that he's forced to be at, and things sometimes that he wants to be at.
Right.
And then on top of all of our
That's
services and normal things. And he said, "Honestly, I've spent too much time there already this week, and because we just moved, it's hard to draw the line between what is church and what is
Yeah.
home for me. Being this close, it's easy for me to just walk over there. But if I lose that sense of home and that separation from, what is my home versus what is my dad's job?
Right.
What is my dad's title? Where do I serve? And I was like, dang, like he was 16, maybe 17.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And I was so blown away. I was like, like the wisdom to be
Right.
like, I do want to learn that, just not today, not this week.
Yeah.
But let me know the next time you're doing something like that. And also the kind of to know that like it's okay to say no.
Right.
And like I'm not going to be hurt about it.
And the relationship is okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the goal of the relationship isn't just for you to teach him things, right? It's also that we have that's a part of it, but it's deeper than that. And I think that's kind of, again, everything we've been talking about encompasses the whole thing. It's really cool. I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, I was so blown away because it's one of those things that, I've never had to deal with that as a kid. Sure, I was here a lot. Sure, my parents went here every time the doors were open, and of course I was here too. But we understand that there's kind of a different burden.
Sure.
When your dad's the pastor.
Yeah.
And he has to be there, and he's expected to do these things and live his life a certain way, and he doesn't always get to set those expectations.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but it just blew me away to even just like draw the line at the separation of what is church, what is /work
right.
my dad's job in my own home. And I just thought, like, what a simple thing.
Right.
And something that's not going to cause problems in our relationship, but is going to create that boundary that provides a safety net.
Well, and what it does is it also bolsters up other relationships because, again, and we've spent a lot of time talking about him, but again, that's kind of the way this series is. It's just we have to talk about the relationships we have. When the house is pretty big, and when we first moved in there, we noticed within a few months, we noticed that everybody, we felt like we were all separated. And so we began to draw back in and kind of centralize what we do as a family and where we do it in the house. And it may have even been around the same time that all that was kind of happening. I'm not sure, but the point was that you have to guard those things in relationships, whether it's saying no to something so that you can say yes to something else, whether it's saying, look, this is just a line I can't cross right now because I don't have the bandwidth to give to this thing. Let's make sure let's look at our goals. Is our goal to do this, or this, and then let's begin moving towards that, or just boundaries in your own life so that you have time to dedicate to relationships. You have time to build these things and protect them, because the enemy wants nothing more than to draw you away from everyone else and get you isolated. I think that's probably the one thing we haven't said in the series yet. That
there's still one more week.
That is super important, is that relationships are not just something that we have as a byproduct of being alive. We are built to be in relationship. It's a picture. Us being in relationship is a picture of even the image of God that we are, right? And so when we recognize that, when we understand that, it puts us in a place where we can appreciate those relationships and choose to protect them, and understand that it's in isolation that the enemy can really do damage to our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is going to look different for everyone. And there's no one set way to do it. There's no one set way to even talk about it. But just, if you start thinking, with these things in mind, you're already taking a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's good.
Right? Even if you don't know, like, I don't know what boundaries to set, or even in what relationships to set them. But if you start asking the questions, do I need to set boundaries in this relationship? That's already moving in the right direction and has you more focused on the goal of building the relationship on solid foundation, rather than just going through the motions and just kind of just checking all the boxes. Sure, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I've read the terms and agreements. Move on. Yeah. And we do that everywhere, right? Life is always moving. And it's fast, and we never slow down and ask ourselves what matters most. And
good.
of every single place that we can ask that, I think our relationships deserve the patience and deserve the time for us to ask the question, does this matter most?
Agreed.
And I feel like this whole series has been talking about that and knowing what it means to build a true godly relationship, not just with a spouse or a partner, but with your friends, with your family, and your coworkers, and everyone that you interact with and get to do life with. And I love this series so much. It's been, again, just another super practical, really simple series that is filled me with a lot of hope and a lot of just joy knowing that, like, okay, I have been doing some things right. I'm not missing the mark on everything, but also that gentle reminder that's saying, like, hey, don't forget about this.
Right.
Keep these things in check. And it's just one of those things that's like, check your heart, is this all set in motion? And it's been a fun time. Excited to jump into our next series. Because I want to learn how to make a lot of money. So that's just a little hint. It's all about making money. No, it's not about making money. But we'll leave you with that, and maybe next week we'll talk
give
about.
You a little taste.
That's
of what
just a little
week.
taste, but we'll give you a little sneak peek, a deep dive next week. As we get closer to our March series. And as always, we love you, and we can't wait to see you again soon.